Oi, let's talk about cosmology. We know the universe is expanding, and we know this because Doppler shift. You've probably heard about Doppler shifts before. A lot of weather stations use Doppler radar to determine the weather. Now, I think the best way to explain this is to talk about sound, because sound is a wave. A fire truck passes by, and as it's approaching, the siren is higher pitched. And as it's leaving you, the siren is lower pitched. But if you were standing next to a fire truck whose siren was going off, you wouldn't hear the sort of shift in pitch that you hear when the fire truck passes you from higher to lower. This happens because as the sound waves approach you, their wavelength, the distance from one crest to the next, the wavelength, is shortened as it approaches you, and as it leaves, it lengthened. And because of this, the sound sounds different to us. And so this same thing happens with electromagnetic radiation, otherwise known as light, because electromagnetic radiation is a wave. It's also a particle. Yeah, that's trippy. But the wave part means it has the same function. As it approaches you, its wavelength is shortened. So if everything was coming towards us, then everything would be blue shifted. With electromagnetic radiation and Doppler shifts, we call the shift as something approaches you blue shift, and we call the shift as it leaves red shift. On the visible spectrum of light, blue is the shorter wavelength, and red is the longer wavelength. So because everything appears to be red shifted, then we can tell that everything is moving away, because the follow. And the reason that we're fairly confident about the red shifting is because of spectral analysis, which is we're able to look at basically signatures of different elements and compounds, so different materials. We're able to look at the signatures of electromagnetic radiation put off by them. The easiest one for us to look at is hydrogen. But there's an awful lot of the universe that has that set of emissions shifted towards radio, which is the low end of the electromagnetic spectrum. And so we look out in the universe and we see these emission lines. The spectra that we know has to be hydrogen because of the distribution of the lines of emission. But instead of being where they should be, they're in the same pattern, but they're shifted towards the red end of the spectrum. That's how we can tell things are redshifted. And we observe this to increasing effect the further away things get in the universe. So by that, we determine that the universe is expanding. Yeah. Now, I'll explain more about this as time goes on. But first, the universe is expanding. And by what we can tell, the universe is expanding infinitely. So, what does this mean? Space-time. Space. And time. And they're related. And maybe, just maybe, they're the same thing. We got space and time. They're space-time. And space-time is infinite. Infinite. Apparently, that is the only way that the universe can be expanding infinitely. Infinite space-time. So space-time is infinite, and it's infinitely expanding. I'll talk about this later when I talk about horizons and stuff, but that's for later.